Without further ado, I will kick us off so we can stay on track for time and also so we have maximum space for our dialogue and discussion with the incredible Helen, who will give us a wave now, and we will introduce her in a quick moment. I have just a couple welcome and introduction logistics to get out of the way. Let me start by saying we are endlessly grateful when you all take time out of your busy days to join us and to be in community. So thank you so much for prioritizing being here. And we have some pretty awesome regulars who continue to show up, and that makes our hearts grow and expand. So shout out to our regulars. And this is our last Brand Together live conversation of 2025. We're going to take a break for the month of December and be back in January. And we hope to see many of you back with us in the new year. I think that makes us our 8th consecutive live conversation. And yeah, it's super fun because you're all here. So I'm just going to really briefly introduce Michelle and I, co-founders of Community Academy, and your co-hosts of Brand Together. If you don't already know, Community Academy is an online and self-paced masterclass. 6 modules. We recommend completing 1 module per week for approximately 6 weeks. We supplement the online learning with live coaching calls with our cohort participants twice a month, which is a great way for us to stay connected, lean into peer coaching, get inspiration from what other brands and leaders are up to. And then, of course, there's opportunity to tap into Michelle and I and our wisdom and expertise in the community space, which is such an honor. We have some pretty incredible brands and humans participating in our current fall cohort, including friends from Legree West and Jaybird, Hedda's, Whoop Whoop, Mandy, Decathlon, Willet, Quench, Omi Foods, and Generation Sport. It's a really awesome crew, and it's not too late to join if anybody's interested. It's not too late to join us before the end of the year.
And not to mention Katie's Cafe, just a little shout out.
Katie's Cafe. Thank you for filling in my blank. And then just a quick note on Brand Together. It's a monthly live conversation series that Michelle and I felt inspired to create and host regularly because we have a lot of friends who are career brand and community builders that we feel so grateful to have been able to learn from, collaborate with, and we want to share that wisdom with all of you. We believe that the world needs community now more than ever in these sort of crazy and uncertain times. The power of like belonging and in-person connection matters deeply. And so we're here to bring you wisdom and inspiration on a monthly basis every, second Thursday of the month. So stay tuned for some pretty exciting guests we have coming up in the new year. That's enough from me. I'm going to ask you to take a quick second and introduce yourself via the chat here. If you could please share where in the world you're joining from. And if you'd like to plug the brand or business that you're representing, please go ahead and do that. And then just share a few words about what inspired you to join us today. Michelle will maybe drop those prompts in the chat. So where you're joining from, the brand you're representing, if that applies, and what inspired you to join us today. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mish in one hot second to introduce our dear and talented friend, Helen. And what you can expect is that we've got some questions prepared for Helen. And we are going to make sure we hold some time and space towards the end of the call for any questions, queries or insights that you might have. So please feel free to go ahead and take notes or drop questions in the chat, and there'll be space for dialogue and discussion in the back half of the call.
Great.
What did I miss? Over to you, Mish.
Oh, you crushed it, Krista. Way to go. Way to send us into a very exciting final Brand Together of the year. I'm going to introduce our esteemed guest. So Helen, I've had the pleasure of knowing Helen first as a colleague, but very quickly thereafter as a dear friend. and a lifelong, we're in this lifelong friendship together now. Helen is I love this term, a culture architect. Sounds so fancy. And she's recently stepped into this wild world of entrepreneurship. She's founded a consulting concept called I'm All Out. So we'll plug that again at the end for you all to check out. And through I'm All Out, she helps companies align people, brand, and operations through seasons of growth and change. When are we not in a season of growth and change? So everyone needs a Helen in their lives. She's built a really impressive career over the years at all-star brands like Lululemon, Rivian, Rally Pickleball, for anyone who knows the Charlotte area. And she's also doing some work with an amazing agency called Tattoo Projects. We're going to dive in a little more to Helen's journey in her career in a minute. But I love this from your bio, Helen, so I'm just going to read it. She brings a blend of structure, soul, and get it done energy. I can attest, turning culture into a competitive edge and community into a growth engine. So without further ado, Krista's going to throw Helen some rapid fire questions your way to get us started and warmed up.
I sure am. Ready, Helen?
I'm ready.
Okay, what's one word that your friends would use to describe you?
I would say adventurous.
Mm. Your favorite thing about Charlotte and or living in the Southeast?
Um, I'm from the South originally, and I think that a lot of times people have a story or understanding of what the South in the US is, and I'd like to be part of, kind of bucking that thought process. And it's just such a beautiful place filled with so much storytelling, rich storytelling, amazing food, connection, and family. It's an incredible place to be from, and there's a lot of really cool stuff coming out of the Southeast, and I think it gets overlooked often. So I love being a part of it.
I love that. Tell us, what was your dream job when you were a kid?
A marine biologist.
Me
For sure.
too.
Yes.
Why
Who
are we
else?
not
Anyone else?
surprised?
Me
Yeah.
too.
I was born in the 80s, and I think it was sort of like a requirement of girls in the 80s to want to be a marine biologist.
I love it. Okay, off script question. I can't resist. How does that show up in your life today?
Oh, good question. Curiosity, maybe. Yeah, just wonder and curiosity. The ocean is just so vast and incredible and mind-blowing, and I think that's what attracted me to it. And I still try to be that learner and stay curious.
Wow, love that. Thank you for sharing. And what's the strangest thing about you, Helen?
Strangest thing. I would say that a lot of people think I'm really chill and relaxed, but I'm pretty uptight. And even as a kid, my mom would be like, go clean your room or something. And I'd be organizing my sock drawer, instead of just shoving my socks under the bed like most kids and then going outside to play again. So I just love structure and tidiness. And yeah, I'm a little more uptight than most people think I am.
Oh my gosh, I'd love you to just come move into my 12-year-old daughter's bedroom for a minute.
Yes.
Get
If
that sock drawer.
anyone wants a closet reorg or kitchen pantry reorg with a label maker, I'm your girl.
I find the gnarliest stuff under and behind her bed and in her drawers, like science experiments.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Over to you, Mish.
Okay, awesome. Well, okay, so Helen, I touched on it earlier, but you've had such a beautiful and interesting career journey. You started in finance. You've been in retail leadership roles. You've led brand and community. You've recently been the owner of the people and culture department. So can you give us sort of a description of what that red thread has been for you throughout your career?
Yeah, I don't think this was alive and well with me when I was in finance, but it came to be once I switched gears and was in the store manager role at Lululemon. I think it's when it really started, and that desire to build from within. So in that position, I really was exposed to what was possible when a company puts people first. And I truly felt connected to the mission, vision, and values of the brand. And I felt like everyone I was working with felt the same way, living and breathing something bigger than ourselves on a regular basis, even just folding stretchy pants. And that energy and approach became contagious to me. And now I'm just basically obsessed with finding other places where that exists or I can help build it. At Rivian, I found like it was pretty similar and very different in other ways, but like even in the Slack channels, people are, talking about hiking. The mission at Rivian is to keep the world adventurous forever. And if anyone doesn't know, Rivian is an electric vehicle company. So it's all about disrupting that typical dealership experience and being a part of the community and creating community within. And it absolutely was happening at all times and was able to bring that internal energy and excitement into our outward expression of the spaces, which are basically like dealerships. So being able to create amazing experiences and just trusting that the car buying would happen because people were so deeply connected to the mission and vision of the brand. It was a real honor to be part of like architecting that.
Mm.
There she is, the culture architect
Oh
again.
yeah, there it is.
It's no surprise you said adventure is your one word, so no wonder you ended up at Rivian.
Yeah, it was a good fit.
I
Amazing.
love and couldn't help but notice the upgrade of like dealerships as, did
Yeah.
you say spaces?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. We call them
subtle
spaces.
and meaningful.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this chapter of your career, Helen, you've pivoted towards working with brands in a consulting capacity, and you've declared your interest in working with brands that are growing with intention versus intensity. What does that look like, and how do you vet this when you're taking on new clients?
Yeah, good one. Um, so it's very similar to what I think you all talk a lot about, and it's part of your cohorts is these things take time. So whether it's culture building or community building, I'm about doing that over time and not looking for the quick fix like a campaign or an offsite to solve for that. And when I start talking about like systems and processes or org charts or what's your meeting and reporting cadence like, and the company isn't totally turned off and like running in the other direction, then we're probably a good match. Because I do think a lot of this building occurs through that day-to-day rhythm. It's not something that can be solved for in small bursts or hitting KPIs overnight to create that like trust and consistency. And when you really commit to that, I think you see the results in, lower turnover, higher engagement, whatever it might be. And hearing things like, how can I do more to help move our mission forward?
Mm, I love that. Mish, it's
So
you.
brilliant. I love that. You have to vet, right? And the intensity piece, my whole body just kind of went like this when even Krista, you were reading the question, because I'm sure others have been a part of those types of cultures where you go in and it's like, boom, we're hitting it. We're not going to even come up for air. And sure, that's short term. You may see really incredible results, but there's no sort of sustainability to that approach. So I think you're on the right track. Keep staying picky about who you're working with.
Yeah.
So Helen, you're pretty active on LinkedIn. So anyone, this is like a little plug, go follow Helen on LinkedIn. And recently you've been talking about this beautiful intersection between community and culture. So culture being the root, community is the fruit. I love it. I can picture that beautiful tree bearing fruit. Can you kind of expand on your POV here?
Yeah, yeah, that's so visual. I'm a pretty visual person, so imagining that root system feeding the tree and allowing for the growth, and then seeing the visual. Another way I like to think about it is like an iceberg. You know, the community is what others will see above the water. And below the surface is like so much foundation and where the culture really keeps everything afloat. And I think a lot of people think about culture as like team dynamics, but I think it's deeper than that. You know, it's being able to speak clearly to your brand's mission, vision, and values. Again, it's like I remember in like a strategy session at Lululemon many, many years ago, asking teams on a call, like close your eyes and give a thumbometer, like thumb up, yes, down, no, somewhere in the middle of, can you recite our mission? Can you recite our values? And having people deal with do I know that? Can I really articulate that? And being like, it's okay if you can't, but like, this is really important. And it's important, I think, because it's how teams can articulate that in different interactions with your guests or out in the community, whatever your brand like touch points are, and then feeling safe to show up and contribute. And really being able to acknowledge that when the internal supports that external expression of a brand, which is community. Oftentimes, I think our brands like to start with that sexy stuff, you know, like events or ambassador programs, and they may not necessarily have done the work inside first. And like you said before, like it can work for periods of time, but you know, it's going to create that inconsistency in how you're making an impact. And I think the most impactful communities are built where that mirror of each other exists and that shared experience and trust exists. And I think that the experience in those moments is the incentive itself versus having to incentivize others to join the experience. I think it's reverse.
That's good. I'm trying to decide if now is the time, because we had an interesting conversation about these, you know, the uptick of, you know, these sort of digital based communities and for example, you know, platforms that claim to kind of host communities, so you can kind of grab onto it and plug it into your strategy and then suddenly you're doing community. Do you have a take on those, Helen, and what you're seeing out there in the world?
For me, that feels like a giant tactic, and it's maybe it will work to a degree, but again, in and of itself, I don't think it's strong enough. And in today's day and age, I think that people will sniff you out if it's just not really true. Like if it's not really honest and built on that strong foundation where, I mean, there's nothing like going to, you know, a place and asking like, do you like working here? You know, do you like being part of this on the inside? And they're like, no, this fucking sucks. And you're like, oh, but it looks amazing online. You're like, yeah, because it's not that hard to build something beautiful digitally that exists in and of itself. Working in a ad agency now, I can tell you like these creatives are exceptional in what they do and create, and they know nothing about community building. Like they create beautiful things, but they're very different to me.
Some risk there of
Yes.
having that experience where you show up to this, the beautiful moment, but then there's no sort of substance underneath it when you start digging.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for tackling that. Love it.
Right
One other
back.
thing on,
Oh, yeah.
sorry,
You go.
Krista, go ahead.
No, you go.
Yeah, there's I can't remember the name of the site, but there's this website. It's something, anyway, it's basically for like college kids when they come home from school and they need a job, and you can go and hire brand ambassadors like through this site, and they get paid, you know, or paid influencers through this site. And it's just like this whole, I think that's so backwards. I mean, maybe it'd be amazing if as the brand, you're like, oh, this is a fun resource of people who want to do this kind of work, engaging with others. It's not for everyone, either digitally or in real life. But if you don't do the work of onboarding them and really sharing with them why the work matters, like what they should sound like, what does our brand tone look and sound like in an, conversation out in the world, it's just like so flat, it's just so flat and one dimensional.
Uh-oh, we lost your volume there, Krista. Thank you to shout out to Ann Co, which is an amazing co-working space that for some reason loses 15 seconds of volume here and there.
Oh no, am I quiet?
You're
Did I
back.
go quiet?
You're
Oh,
back.
too bad. I won't repeat
Too bad.
myself. We'll just move forward. Tell us, Helen, for brands or founders who want to adopt community as a growth avenue, what would your advice be?
I think it's in line with a lot of what you all teach and share. It's starting small and starting inside. So again, I think a lot of times brands will jump to the tactics and want to show something to the world, rather than starting with building from inside and gaining that real alignment, and determining what exactly is the reason why you want community. Like what is that purpose? Is it simply to drive sales, or is it, to be part of a movement, and create something better and more beautiful in the world? And then making sure that you're hiring, onboarding, and ongoing training. Here I go with my ops stuff again, but it's true. That's what I think. That really supports that mission being able to come to life, from inside.
Yeah. Maybe you could give us like, and you may have almost answered this question, but like, what are three internal foundations that you would look at before even beginning to look outside when it comes to community building? What are three areas of internal foundation that you prioritize?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll answer it slightly differently, but it gets somewhere. So at Rally Pickleball, I was working directly with the founders, and they had worked with our brand director, who is also ex Lululemon, Maddie Sims, if anyone knows her, but they had done a beautiful job crafting, what the mission, vision, values were. But we essentially were a hospitality business, so hiring for hourly employees, and many of whom had never worked with a company that was like mission driven. They're like, I'm just trying to like sell my cocktails and like make good tips here. So there was a real opportunity to lean in and support them understanding the broader why we existed. So the founders and I took the starting place of that brand vision and created operating principles. So it was, how do these values actually come to life when you're doing your job? And it's something simple like at Lululemon, like folding your pants, was important because it created an experience for the guests that valued their time. They were able to find the right size, the right color in the right place, get what they needed and get out. It's the same with how you interact with your guests if you're serving them food or beverage. The mission at Rally is to be a catalyst for connection. So a lot of it's steeped in addressing head on the loneliness epidemic. And so we wanted our staff to feel really engaging intentionally. And we built a menu of food items that were to be shared. So it was finding ways to consider that mission within every detail of how the business was built. And I think that that's something you can ask yourself is, when I say these values mean something to me, or this mission means something to me, how is it going to come to life in these small ways that would be easy to just like skip and bypass? I worked with a like a gym franchise here called Metabolic, and we talked about the, what is it like in the waiting room? What are the conversations? What do they sound like? Where are you being checked in? Are you checking someone in behind the desk or in front of the desk with an iPad so you can be more out with the community? So I think that there are ways to challenge the every little interaction, every little product that you're offering, and say, is there a way to bring our vision and mission to life through these things, and then holding your teams accountable to doing that.
So good.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it starts from within.
Yeah, and I think I'm so glad we spend a little bit of a time on it, because I think it's like really tempting as a founder with like big growth goals to skip over the internal piece and start to project outwardly. And I think, yeah, the like watch out there is it consistent? Is it authentic? And is it rooted in true like connection and belonging, or is it like for the purpose of growing the business? I think that's a place to watch out, is if you're rushing too quickly to connecting externally before creating that internal foundation, it creates some risk for sure.
Mhm.
This is such a good setup for my next question, because let's imagine we've got that foundation set. We're good. We have our mission clear. Our teams are all doing this when we ask if they can recite it. We have, our operating principles in place. From there, you're ready. You're ready to start getting out there in the world and creating a true sort of brand community program. Do you have some sort of success factors in mind when you think about that facet of building community as a part of your strategy?
Yeah, like KPIs and stuff like that. Is that what you mean? Or
Well, it could be
more?
KPIs. It could also just be sort of, I mean, we have to ask ourselves this with building out the components of Community Academy. It's almost like when can you say, maybe I'll phrase it a different way. When could you like say we're doing community well? And what would sort of need to be in place in order to make that claim?
Yeah, I think when people, are showing up both internally and externally, and they're sharing generously with their community to bring them into yours. So there is a natural eagerness to say, I have got to tell my friends about this and they have to come next time, or I'm so eager to recommend a friend of mine to work here because, it's just so incredible, and what we stand for is real and true. And I want my friends to work here because yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Brilliant. I love it. That's your litmus test. I always think about like if I were a founder, my dream would be walking into a coffee shop and hearing somebody sitting with a friend chatting about my brand. Like that would be success for me. I'd be like,
Yes,
I
100%. Oh my
hopefully
gosh.
the sales would, again, like you've mentioned this at Rally, like the car sales will come.
Mhm.
It's hard to sit in that place of belief and trust that the sales will come when you're focusing on the right stuff. And you have to believe that that company that's being chatted about at the coffee shop is doing well financially as well.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Who do you look for inspiration? And what brands are doing community well right now?
I have two that come to mind that I actually worked with quite a lot with Rivian as partners. And one is Snow Peak, which is this is my dog Bear
Hi, Bear.
joining us. Snow Peak, which is a Japanese like outdoor camping brand. And if you don't know who they are, look them up. They're very expensive and I think worth it. Everything they do is, Japanese beautiful. It's just like next level gorgeous product. But one story that I think is really cool is there was a period in time, this feels like lore, it's real, but I don't know when it happened many years ago. But at one period of time, they were recognizing that their sales were not going very well, and they'd been trying different tactics and it just like wasn't working. And the CEO was like, let's take our people camping. So they started this annual experience called Snow Peak Way that I'm sure at the beginning it was like, you know, a mix of internal and external like brand advocates. And now it has grown into this incredible experience, and they're happening in multiple cities across the US and I assume in Japan, and maybe multiple places. And I was lucky enough to go to one, and it was like the coolest, most inspiring expression of what you see of that brand when you look at it online. And it was like, yeah, this is it. And all of these people had all this cool gear, and you could go from campsite to campsite and engage with each other and ask, you know, what products are you using for this? And everyone was just so blown away. And a lot of what they focus on is takibi, which is essentially gathering around the fire for a meal, and you know, having like little kebabs and different sharing meals. And it was takibi for like 3 days and whiskey, which is lovely. It was quite cold, so I appreciated that. So I think they just smash it, and they just built a place in Portland. Amanda, maybe you've been, I don't know. Yeah. So they've got like a whole campsite, a permanent campsite that you can now go camp there, like book like a hotel and go camp with Snow Peak, which would be incredible.
I can just picture like the sitting around the fire and telling, has anyone heard like the Japanese yokai stories? My 5-year-old is very obsessed with them, but it's like essentially yokai are like Japanese ghosts, but they're so, the storytelling around them is so creative. I can't imagine that like there has to be lots of yokai chatter at these things.
1,000%. And like, as far as like the culture community mirror experience, you know, the staff that come and put it on are all just like the most obsessed and the most knowledgeable, and like can't wait to see people's stuff, and are doing like, you know, what shibori dyeing, you know, in the afternoons. And it's just, it absolutely is such a clear experience that that internal external mirror exists. So that's a good one.
Ooh, this is such a good one. What are you going to say next?
The other one, hopefully will be as inspiring. So is another brand I worked with at my time with Rivian, and it's called Camp Yoshi. And does anyone know Camp Yoshi? I would die.
Is there a Japanese theme
Yeah,
here?
no, they're American black guys, but I actually don't know where that name came from. But they're from this, so brothers from the South, Ron and Rashad, grew up like camping a lot, and Ron went off to be like in finance. He lives in Charlotte near me. And then Rashad went off to be a chef. And then after, you know, a period of time, like Rashad gets married, they just want to look for, yes, whoever dropped that in the chat, incredible, Krista, thank you. They wanted to blend that incredible high-end cooking experience with expanding the Black and Brown community access to outdoors, and like encouraging more of that. So they, at Rivian, gave them a bunch of trucks, and they'd go on these camping adventures, and like the food is 5-star eating and like exceptional cocktails. They do not skimp on anything. And they go on these like multi-day adventures, and a lot in the Pacific Northwest. Rashad and his wife live in Portland. So they do lots of, and they work with Snow Peak a lot as well. But they just, they've been featured in a lot of really amazing editorial. They get into fashion. They really just like find this interesting through line of mixing Black and Brown culture, food, and outdoor adventure that is second to none. And they're just like beautiful humans. They're so sweet and kind.
And anyone who's like a camping skeptic,
Yes.
they're
And
like, we'll
yes.
leave over. We'll
Yeah, they do
eat
like a lot
well.
of car camping. So you can go on longer day hikes, but like people can have a bit of that security that they've got a ride back home.
It's
So
great. I
pretty
like
cool.
the thread here of like the outdoor and, you know, camping being something that can unite folks because we talk a lot about, you know, running culture, right? Like community feels really natural within, you know, if you're a running brand, it's like, well, how are you going to build community? Well, run clubs, and it feels a little bit more natural, but it's super cool to hear your examples, Helen. We have one more little question. It's a hot one because we always talk about this, and you did already sort of speak to this a little bit. So see if there's anything for you to add here, and then we're going to open it up, get your questions ready. But measuring ROI, it's always it's always a tough one with community because community does feel longer term and it feels like you're creating a feeling, you're creating a magnetic field around your brand that's pulling people in. But how do you measure that? So do you have favorite KPIs that you look at when you're measuring the success of community programs?
Yeah, that I like to say the art and science of it. Maybe others think of it that way. But and I think that it's similar for culture building as well. Like people want you to like fix turnover overnight with, you know, something to do with culture, and you're like, that's usually not possible. But I like to look at both lagging and leading indicators. So that's what I would recommend is like if you're a founder yourself, or if you're working with you know, senior leadership, anyone you need to convince, is being able to create some sort of timeline and discussion about the reality of when certain things should and can be measured, to, you know, be a bit more realistic about what's going on so there's no confusion. You know, you could look at leading indicators like, you know, how many people showed up to this experience, or you know, what was sentiment, like you can do a survey or something like that briefly after an experience and get some good feedback and be able to say like, yeah, this did actually tick a box. They gave me feedback that, you know, mirrored what I was hoping that they would take away from said experience. And then of course lagging being more in the realm of like sales and retention, referrals, things like that.
I love
But
that.
oh,
Lagging and leading and lagging. I'm going to be using that from
leading
now
and
on.
lagging, yeah. And Krista, I think in one of these you said this, and we used to say it at Lululemon, like you get goosebumps. You know, it's like, I mean, how incredible that we work somewhere we're like, yes, someone said they got goosebumps, like A+ job for me in like my community building moment. But like I said before, if people are asking and saying like, how can I contribute to this cause, this brand, this mission, whatever, more, whether they're internal or external, I mean, that is like, to me, the biggest green flag that you're like on the right track.
Yeah, and then one day someone will invent the listening that's going to happen out at the coffee shops to see how many times your
Yeah,
brand gets
totally.
mentioned, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for this rich discussion and for fielding all of our questions we threw at you. What's out there? Who has a question they want to ask? Helen, just keep it really conversational, jump off mute. What are you curious about?
I've got a question. Um, so I come from the content side of things, and I feel like when it comes to community, there's maybe always this tension around content. Like you want to maximize your investment in community by capturing it and exploiting it, creating FOMO, but also sometimes having that videographer, that photographer there almost compromises the experience. What are your general thoughts on the role of content in community activations?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like there are some places and spaces where it might not feel appropriate or like gross, you know, to the attendees. So even within one experience, I think you could probably build in like sections where photography is happening. So potentially at like the beginning or at the end versus throughout the experience. So they're not feeling like clearly exploited. And then we We used to do like a lot of capture, and it wasn't to post, and we would sort of like make that clear, but then we would give the imagery to the guests, like quick turn it around so they could have access to it like the same evening or afternoon, whatever, and then hope that they would share, which they would, because the photography would be gorgeous. But it'd be easy to say like the photographer is here for you. We won't be sharing this content, but we'll be providing it after, if you, and you can do what you wish. So that's kind of a interesting workaround.
Do you think there's a marked difference in when you share that content? Like if you share it the day of or the next day, do you see a lot more interaction and sharing than say if you'd like have a photographer who wants to perfect it and edit and you share it a week later?
I'm not the best in the world at like digital, and I think like I think it's when people are resharing it in an intentional way is the most important part of it. So, you know, if it's like a really powerful experience and someone's going to leave and be like, holy shit, I need to like digest what was just occurring. They may not share for, you know, days or weeks, but they could post something that's, you know, totally epic. So I personally am not like a digital marketing expert and have a very specific answer for that, but authenticity and sharing to me is the most important. Yeah.
I want to build on this if I may. I love this question and I get really excited about it because I've been like in the position leading brands where I'm like accountable for content creation and it's time consuming and it's expensive. And I think community done well, like in alignment with a lot of the ideas, principles, philosophies we've talked about today, is like such a rich and like generating way of creating real authentic content. And so I think there's like real opportunity to optimize budget and resources, and like dovetail community and content creation together. And I 100% agree with the watch outs of like there's a time and a place to have a camera on or present. So certainly opportunity for discretion, but I think it's actually a good, like a really great opportunity to create buy-in and to create some like budget and resource optimization inside brands is if you do one community activation really well every month, you're going to create yourself a lot of both brand owned and also UGC content that can amplify that like feeling that you're creating.
The additional point on that, I don't know if you guys remember the job love, like hashtag job love
Yeah.
moment at Lululemon. So for those of you who that's not obvious, it's just basically this invitation to be like, talk about how much you love working here. And then all of a sudden, and this was like early days of Instagram, right? Like when
Yeah, the
filters
dawn of the hashtag, right?
yeah, the hashtag was real and like helpful, and like the filters were terrible. And we were just like, you know, smashing posts all the time, just being out in community, but with ourselves. So I think that there's also something there where you turn your team, your internal team into content generators also, and that's just like free advertising.
Mhm, mhm.
Oh, Amanda, I see these comments in the chat. Like, does it
Oh,
have to be, does it really have to be the next day? I just think about, Krista and I were both at an experience in Squamish. It was called Feast. It was like a full day, women's focused unconference, I guess you could call it. And just the amount of sharing that was happening immediately after, like had the kind of professional photos been shared at that point, it just would have dialed
Mhm.
to the next level. That said, I think the photos did come out maybe a week later, Krista. And
I think
it
too.
actually for 2 weeks, right? And then it kind of
Oh
gave it
wow,
another
too.
moment
That's a
in the
little
sun.
long. Yeah.
So I think you can.
Yeah, what was your thought there? Did you say like it gave it another
Yeah, it was like two humps of
burst?
a camel, right? So like
Yeah.
first one is the
Mhm.
blitz of UGC, and it felt like it just happened to be that beautiful. I think if you're generating like a really beautiful experience, you're naturally going to have people more focused on taking their own content. And so
Yeah.
that went out the door. And then that second camel hump ended up being the beautiful, professional photography.
Totally. I love your thinking here, and I saw the same thing. And what I would say is like back to the point of lagging indicators, like you're doing community well when 2 weeks later, when the album comes out and your community goes nuts and starts sharing again, that you're onto something. And if 2 weeks later the album comes out and it falls flat, that there's,
You need to hire a new photographer at that point.
yeah. Or like, no, I mean, even go back to the event brief and like get
Yeah,
curious about what
exactly.
wasn't resonant 2 weeks later.
Amanda, you
Yeah,
are
I want to switch gears a little bit. I took a lot of notes, Helen. I like your like internal culture approach. One of the things you said was that all of this takes time. So, and I also have a pretty operational mind, and like, so I'm thinking, we need operating principles, even like for, who is ever running our customer service emails, or who, like I also oversee sales. So like, how do those operating principles, like what are those operating principles for the different tasks that everyone's doing? So I love that kind of groundwork approach. How are you pitching this to founders that you're working with? These are founders who don't have a lot of money probably, or if they are, they've taken on investment and they're like, okay, we need sales, we need to see measurable results. So how are you, I guess, pitching this, and kind of where are you starting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm slow burn. But what I'll say about like how I'm pitching it is it's definitely a part of the whole, right? So to be clear, there would be no request to like divert 100% of your budget, from sales and marketing to, internal culture building. In starting small and in stages. The old adage of hire slow, fire fast would be a simple place where I would want to start, right? So it's like if you are starting small, if you are in a small business, if you don't have a lot of money, the most important thing is to be really choosy with who is working with you and who is customer facing in whether it's over digital or in real life, because you want people who get it quick and they don't necessarily need a lot of coaching to do a pretty good job expressing the things that are important to you, having those qualities that are important to how you want your interaction to look and feel for your brand. So always starting with people first. And I think being really choosy and clear in what you need in your hiring is so critical. When you have the wrong people, it will be terribly difficult and you will burn tons of time and tons of resources. And that's just not going to get anyone in any good place anytime quickly.
Anyone else want to jump in with a hot question for Helen?
I have a hot tip. Krista, I think you maybe had already left Lululemon by then when you were at Sage, but my co-founder met her husband at a Lululemon event. And if you can take a photo of the moment two people fall in love, I promise you they'll share it every single year on their anniversary and you'll get a lot of distance out of that content.
I love it.
100. Speaking of, those are like those ripple effects, right? Of like when you, again, you're doing community well when people fall in love, get married, start businesses together, because brought two unexpected people together at the right time, at the right place. Like it's hard to measure those things, but the stories are limitless.
Do you know, Amanda, do you know Mao from Air Libre?
No.
Oh, he just moved to Vancouver, but he's from Mexico City and lived in LA, and he does run events, like travel run events. And I was asking him when we had coffee a few weeks ago, I was like, dude, have you ever, like had any marriages or whatever. He's like, we do have someone in a long-term relationships, but he's like, you wouldn't believe the amount of dogs that have been adopted on his trips
Oh,
because they all run in Mexico.
That's so sweet. I'm just flagging Terry. I saw you popped a comment in the chat. Helen, do you want to speak to, it sounds like, yeah, we've been focusing quite a bit on the conversation around building that foundation and like tackling, inside before we start going out. But Terry, do you want to explain, did you have a question or was it more a comment? Oh, okay, I see. Loyalty
wow.
transmits within the consumer as community. Oh wow, this is like quite an equation here.
Consumer as community minus community equals sales. Yeah. I don't know if I can translate that exactly, but
I wonder, maybe the question is how
very good.
does, oh, there we
Terry,
go.
you're on
He's on.
mute.
Mhm.
Terry, you're on mute, buddy.
How's that?
Yeah, good.
Here we
So
are.
if you think about it and you're talking about from the very beginning, the culture within creating the community, the brand itself, that mission, what is meaningful, that's really part of marketing and sales. It transfers to the budget and everything, create the content. How are people connecting? If they don't connect, they just buy another product. People buy from friends, from product that they feel loyal to. So that's the equation. Once you create community, you create the loyalty. You add to the culture with the consumer, and there's your sales. So I can talk through that with my management team, co-founders, whatever, all day long. Without that, you really have nothing. You're just another usual brand, right? Okay, so there's the translation, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerry.
I'm
I said
gonna
amen,
disappear.
Terry, as
I'm
you're
gonna
talking about it.
I'm gonna
Thanks for bringing
disappear
your,
again.
your cool hat into view.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay,
So I had to get on here because I'm just such a fan of Helen's. I mean,
yeah, I know the feeling.
right.
Yeah.
So at first I actually thought this community was just for women from some of y'all's. I know now, but I asked Helen, when do I get to listen to some of these things that you're talking about? And she said, no, where did you get that? It's for everybody. So here I am, and I appreciate it. And
we're
this has been really good.
So glad you're here, Terry, and thanks for helping us land the plane.
Okay. All right.
Em and Amanda, final word. Who wants it? Or we might have time for both.
I mean, I put mine in the chat, but I guess I'll ask it out loud if that's okay. Essentially, I think we're always asking the question to people of like, what's your morning routine? What do you do to set yourself up for success? And it's like, we're not really asking that question in businesses. And I'm wondering, like, when you're nurturing these work cultures and things like that, is there anything that comes to mind for you of like daily check-ins, weekly check-ins? Because I think a lot of employers think of like working on your company culture comes with a price tag, and it's like, oh, we have to do events, we have to take them places, we have to give them things, and it's like, no, we just want to feel heard and cared about and acknowledged. And it's like, is there systems that you think you've kind of established or found out that helps with this? That's my question.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with coming on, I'm obsessed with 30, 60, 90s and like co-creating those with whoever you're hiring. So maybe the 30-day you just hand over, and then the 60 and the 90 absolutely you would co-create and make sure that they're feeling clear on their role and expectations, and also just like becoming a part of the brand and getting it. So that's sort of like a very tactical setting up tool. I set reminders anytime I've had direct reports. I would have consistent one-on-ones, whatever the right cadence is. If once a week is way too much, then every 3 weeks, but I would always put that on my calendar. I had an individual I worked with in Australia who found our one-on-ones were a bit too short to feel connected to each other. So we added a personal connect. We didn't live in the same place, so we'd add a personal connect kind of on an off cadence where we'd have a virtual coffee and it would just be no talking about work really, and just more like connecting and being willing to say, yes, I will carve out the time to do that, because it makes everything better on the back end, right? It feels maybe like a lot on the front end, but well worth it in the long run, especially when it's like, she's the right employee, she's the right person I want to be investing in. So that, and then a lot of listening. So I think there's a lot of, depending on the size of your business, engagement surveys and things like that can sort of be like, maybe they're good or bad, but I do think it's an amazing tool, but it doesn't solve everything. We would have at Rally, what we would do is we would host like a town hall experience and basically identify out of the hourly team. We were never able to do like giant group monthly meetings or quarterly meetings. It was too impossible. We had too many employees. We were open for too many hours. It just was not going to be a thing. So we'd identify basically like a representative per different level or group, and they would have a set period of time to gather feedback from their peers and then come to a group setting with a manager, like the GM and myself, and no other managers in the space. So we were attempting to create the safest environment we possibly could to share grievances, celebrate wins, ask for what they needed. And we'd spend like 2 hours once a quarter doing that. And then we would do the engagement survey after another week or so they could disseminate additional information. We also had like a newsletter, and would just ask for a lot of contribution and requests for what kind of information did they want in the newsletter, and attempting to share beyond the siloed work that was just naturally occurring in our really small business, because we were moving really fast to push information down different channels. So those are some things that we would do.
Thanks. And thanks, Em. That was a really great question. I loved it so much. I love the way you framed it, especially. We got to go, friends. Thanks, Helen. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I popped the links to follow Helen into the chat. Make sure you do that. And then we're at communityacademy.co. Let's stay in touch, and we'll see you in the new year for Brand Together 2026.
January 8th, 11 a.m. Save the date.
Thanks, friends.
Bye, guys.